Kody Brown's awkward romance attempts and shocking family revelations rock Robyn and the Browns. Kody Brown begins her revelation with a quiet but powerful tone that immediately captures the attention of everyone listening. She speaks not as a celebrity or a reality TV star but as a daughter, a mother, and a woman who has finally found the courage to open up about the emotional complexities of growing up under Kody Brown's unconventional family system. In a recent candid discussion, Kody exposes a painful reality that many viewers had long suspected but few dared to say aloud. She reveals that in her father's household, love often felt like something to be earned, not freely given. The words hit hard, not only for fans who have followed Sister Wives for years, but also for her mother, Kody Brown, who appeared visibly stunned by the depth of her daughter's truth. Kody's reaction was not one of anger but of heartbreak and introspection. For years, she had defended the family's way of life, explaining it as a journey of faith, balance, and sacrifice. But hearing her daughter describe how affection felt conditional forced her to confront the emotional aftermath of a structure that often prioritized obedience and loyalty over natural connection. Kody's statement brought into focus a long-standing tension that had quietly simmered behind the scenes, the emotional hierarchy that Kody had, perhaps unintentionally, built among his wives and children. Her words suggested that for many of the Brown kids, love and validation were not constants but rewards, granted when they conformed to expectations and withdrawn when they didn't. For Kody Brown, this revelation adds another layer to an already complicated public image. Once seen as the confident patriarch who tried to balance the emotional needs of multiple wives and children, Kody now faces growing scrutiny for how that balance may have come at a cost. Kody's words challenge the perception of him as an affectionate, present father and instead paint a portrait of a man who measured relationships through performance, how well his children aligned with his beliefs, respected his authority, or stayed within his emotional orbit. The phrase "earn love" may sound harsh, but for many viewers, it encapsulates what they have seen unfold on screen for years. A father struggling to manage affection in a family so large that attention itself became a form of currency. Kody, listening to Kody's words, seemed shaken yet reflective. This was not just about one man's parenting style. It was about the legacy of emotional conditioning that had shaped her family's identity. For Kody, who has fought for years to build independence after her separation from Kody, this moment was deeply symbolic. It highlighted that even after leaving the plural marriage, the emotional scars of its structure linger within the children who grew up trying to find their place in it. Kody's honesty became a mirror reflecting the unspoken truth of many plural families. When love must be divided, it often ends up being rationed. Fans quickly flooded online forums and social media with messages of support for Kody, applauding her bravery and empathy. Many pointed out that her calm, composed delivery showed not resentment but understanding, a mature recognition that Kody's behavior might have stemmed from his own unresolved insecurities. Analysts of the show noted how this moment marked a turning point, not only in the Brown family narrative, but also in the broader conversation about emotional dynamics in polygamous families. When affection is tied to hierarchy and performance, the children often grow up feeling unseen, believing they must constantly prove their worth. Kody's confession gave voice to that silent struggle. The deeper significance of this revelation lies in how it challenges the idealized image of large plural families. Kody Brown has long argued that plural marriage teaches cooperation, equality, and spiritual unity. But Kody's experience reveals how these ideals can unravel under the weight of human limitations. Managing multiple relationships, emotional needs, and egos is an extraordinary task even for one household. When that expands to multiple homes, it becomes nearly impossible to offer consistent emotional support. Kody's insight exposes how easily such systems can shift from being about shared love to structured control, where affection becomes selective and often conditional. Kody's emotional reaction spoke volumes. It was as if she was hearing the unfiltered consequences of choices made years ago, choices she had rationalized for the sake of faith and community. Yet seeing the cost paid by her children opened an entirely new layer of the dream that plural marriage could create a stronger, more unified family had, in some ways, fractured the very relationships it was meant to strengthen. Mykelti's honesty, though painful, became a moment of healing between mother and daughter, a recognition that love cannot thrive when it is earned through fear or compliance. Public opinion has shifted dramatically since this conversation aired. Many longtime viewers who once admired Kody's confidence now see him as emotionally disconnected, a man who struggles to empathize beyond his own sense of authority. Others, however, sympathize with him, arguing that Kody's methods were his attempt to maintain order in an environment few could handle. They suggest that what Mykelti perceived as conditional love may have been Kody's way of enforcing respect and discipline in a sprawling family dynamic. Yet even these defenders acknowledge that something essential was lost along the way: the spontaneity of affection, the ease of a child simply knowing they are loved without having to ask. Psychologists commenting on the show have offered insightful perspectives on the issue. They note that children raised in complex family structures often develop heightened emotional sensitivity, learning early how to read the moods of authority figures to secure affection or avoid conflict. Over time, this conditioning can lead to patterns of self-doubt, people-pleasing, or suppressed anger. Mykelti's courage in naming her experience publicly may serve as a catalyst for healing, not only within her family but for countless viewers who recognize their own childhoods in her story. Her revelation invites parents everywhere to reflect on how easily love can become transactional when emotional presence is replaced by rules and expectations. For Kody, the path forward will require more than public explanations. It will demand introspection and accountability. The perception that his children had to earn love strikes at the core of his identity as a father. It forces him to confront whether his leadership style was truly rooted in faith and care or in the need for control. His challenge now is not to defend his past, but to redefine his relationships in the present, to prove that love can be unconditional, even in a family that once lived by structure and hierarchy. For a man who has spent decades advocating for plural marriage as a lifestyle of abundance and shared devotion, this moment calls for a humbler, more personal form of love, one that listens, adapts, and grows. Christine's response, since the revelation has been both graceful and wise. Rather than blaming or attacking, she has expressed gratitude that her daughter feels safe enough to speak her truth. She recognizes that healing begins with honesty, and that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set families free. Her maturity contrasts sharply with the tension that once defined her relationship with Kody, suggesting that her emotional independence has allowed her to respond with empathy instead of bitterness. Viewers have praised her for this evolution, seeing in her the embodiment of resilience, a woman who has learned to transform pain into strength. As the discussion continues online, Sister Wives fans are revisiting earlier seasons with new eyes. Scenes that once seemed ordinary now carry deeper meaning. Kody's moments of frustration, his distance from some of the kids, and his favoritism toward others are being reevaluated through the lens of Mykelti's confession. What emerges is a portrait of a family that, while unique in structure, faces the same universal struggles as any other: the need to feel loved, valued, and understood. Mykelti's words have stripped away the layers of television drama and revealed the human heart beneath the show's glossy surface. There is also a broader social reflection here. Mykelti's story challenges audiences to think critically about how cultural or religious structures can unintentionally shape emotional realities. It shows that even in the pursuit of higher ideals, families must prioritize individual emotional well-being. Love that must be earned is love that teaches insecurity. Love that is freely given teaches confidence and empathy. For a generation of viewers raised on reality TV, this lesson resonates far beyond the Brown household. It speaks to the importance of emotional awareness, communication, and the courage to challenge traditions that no longer serve happiness. As the episode concludes and the cameras fade, what remains is a sense of quiet transformation. Mykelti's revelation has not only shocked her family, but also opened a door to deeper understanding. It reminds us that truth, even when painful, is the first step toward healing. Christine, now more at peace with her own journey, stands beside her daughter with a strength that comes from acceptance. Kody, meanwhile, faces a critical crossroad, one that could determine whether his legacy is defined by defense or by growth. And for the viewers who have followed their story for over a decade, this moment feels less like a scandal and more like a reckoning, a chance to see what love really means when the performance ends. Kody Brown begins his moment of attempted humor with Robyn in a way that instantly stirs mixed emotions among viewers. Sitting together in what seemed like an awkward yet tender evening scene, Kody tries to spark connection by making light of himself, joking about his stinky body as a way to get Robyn in the mood. The moment, equal parts uncomfortable and revealing, shows how far the once confident patriarch of sister wives has drifted from his former sense of control and charisma. For years, Kody presented himself as a man of structure, a husband capable of managing multiple relationships under one moral and spiritual umbrella. But in this scene, the facade cracks. What was meant to be playful comes across as a glimpse into the strained intimacy and emotional fatigue that now defines his only remaining marriage. Robyn Brown, seated beside him, tries to smile, but her body language tells a deeper story. There is a flicker of discomfort, an awkward tension that hovers between them like static. This was not the same Robyn who once described Kody as her soulmate or the man she was spiritually destined to be with. Instead, her reaction reveals the exhaustion of years spent defending their union amid public criticism and private fractures. When Kody asks, "You like that?" after his bizarre attempt at flirtation, Robyn's polite laughter barely masks her unease. It's a moment that reminds audiences that love, no matter how devoted, cannot survive on performance alone. This particular interaction between Kody and Robyn has ignited strong responses among Sister Wives fans. Many see it as symbolic, a representation of the decaying emotional foundation that once held the Brown family together. Kody's attempt at romance, framed as a joke about his body, underscores how detached he has become from genuine emotional connection. Once a man who prided himself on leadership, passion, and conviction, Kody now appears as someone trying to rekindle affection through self-deprecating humor, as if mocking himself could replace the deep sincerity that has long been missing. For Robyn, the moment reveals her quiet endurance, the way she often carries the emotional weight of their relationship, even when the spark has faded. To understand the depth of this moment, we have to look beyond the immediate awkwardness and examine what it represents in the broader story of Sister Wives. Over the years, Kody's marriages with Christine, Janelle, and Meri have all unraveled, leaving Robyn as his sole partner. What began as a family built on unity, shared faith, and spiritual purpose has now narrowed into a single, complicated marriage overshadowed by public scrutiny and private tension. Kody and Robyn's scenes now often carry a heavy sense of isolation. Gone are the group discussions around family planning or shared holidays. What remains are quiet, uncomfortable interactions where both seem to be trying to convince themselves, and perhaps the audience, that their bond still holds meaning. Kody's behavior in this scene reflects more than just awkward humor. It reflects the erosion of confidence in a man who once viewed himself as the center of his family's universe. His attempt to charm Robyn feels like a desperate grasp for the connection he has lost, not only with his other wives but also with his identity as a husband and leader. In past seasons, Kody was assertive, passionate, and at times overbearing. He believed in his authority and in the spiritual design of plural marriage. But now that self-assurance has been replaced by defensiveness, sarcasm, and misplaced humor. The stinky body moment, while laughable on the surface, becomes a window into his inner frustration, a sign that he is trying to use levity to cover the cracks in his marriage and perhaps to escape the weight of his own emotional shortcomings. Robyn's role in this dynamic has become equally complex. She has long been portrayed as the favorite wife, the one Kody prioritized emotionally and physically. Yet with the departure of the other wives, that favoritism has turned into isolation. She now carries the full responsibility of meeting Kody's emotional needs, a task that seems to be wearing her down. In interviews, Robyn has often said she never wanted this outcome, that she envisioned a large, united family where everyone would coexist in love and faith. But reality has not matched that dream. As Kody's relationships collapsed, Robyn found herself defending him more than connecting with him. This latest scene captures that tension perfectly. She tries to respond kindly, but there's a sadness in her eyes, the look of a woman realizing that humor cannot fix what's broken. For fans, this moment also raises deeper questions about what happens when love turns into obligation. Kody's attempt at affection feels forced because it comes from a place of guilt and confusion rather than genuine connection. After years of tension, emotional distance, and the public collapse of his plural marriages, Kody seems unsure of how to express intimacy anymore. His words, meant to be playful, come across as awkward and almost self-mocking. Viewers have noted how this reflects a broader truth about the Brown family. That years of trying to uphold appearances have left the remaining couple emotionally disconnected from reality. Humor becomes a shield, masking vulnerability that neither fully knows how to address. Psychologists who analyze relationship dynamics often speak about the role of authenticity in maintaining intimacy. When partners feel pressured to perform affection or to maintain appearances for external validation, the bond weakens. What we see in Kody and Robyn's interaction is precisely that breakdown. Kody's self-deprecating remark about his stinky body is more than an odd joke. It is an unconscious confession of insecurity. He knows that his image both as a husband and as a man has taken a hit. He has lost the admiration of his former wives, the respect of some of his children, and in many ways the faith of viewers who once saw him as a figure of conviction. His humor is a way of reclaiming control, but it also exposes how deeply uncertain he has become. Robyn, meanwhile, remains the emotional anchor of the relationship, but even anchors can drift when the waters grow too turbulent. Her attempts to laugh along feel like the efforts of someone trying to preserve peace rather than enjoy the moment. Over the seasons, she has transitioned from being seen as the cause of division to being the last person standing beside a man who has lost nearly everything else. Her compassion has often been mistaken for manipulation, but in scenes like this, it's clear she is simply trying to keep the relationship afloat. Yet no amount of patience can fill the emotional gap left by Kody's diminishing self-awareness. When intimacy feels transactional or performative, even humor becomes heavy. This scene also prompts reflection on how public scrutiny affects private relationships. Kody and Robyn have lived much of their marriage in front of cameras, with every gesture and word analyzed by fans. Over time, this pressure creates a kind of emotional exhaustion, where even moments meant to be lighthearted become laden with expectation. Kody's awkward attempt at humor may have been a private joke between them in another context, but within the reality show framework, it becomes a public symbol of everything that feels forced in their relationship. The irony is that the couple once wanted to show the world the beauty of plural marriage, but now they are left showcasing the uncomfortable remains of what happens when that system collapses. Fans' reactions to this scene were swift and divided. Some laughed it off as typical Kody behavior, cringeworthy but harmless. Others found it deeply sad, a sign of how disconnected he and Robyn have become. Many viewers sympathized with Robyn, interpreting her awkward smile as a reflection of years of emotional endurance. On social media, comments ranged from amusement to genuine concern, with some fans expressing that Kody's sense of humor had become a coping mechanism for his emotional decline. For longtime viewers, the scene was not just about romance gone wrong. It was a metaphor for the state of the Brown family itself, where laughter has replaced real communication and small talk has taken the place of genuine intimacy. From a broader emotional perspective, the scene is almost tragic in its symbolism. Kody's stinky body remark becomes a metaphor for the decaying foundation of his family life, the rot of pride, miscommunication, and ego that has been festering for years. Yet, even within that discomfort, there is something human about it. It shows a man grasping, however awkwardly, for connection in the only way he knows how. In his mind, perhaps he believed humor could bridge the gap between him and Robyn, could bring levity to a relationship burdened by loss and public judgment. And while it didn't quite work, it did remind viewers that even flawed love is still a search for belonging. As the episode closes, the laughter fades, and what remains is a quiet realization. This is not the confident, assertive Kody of early seasons. This is a man trying to make sense of himself in a world where his own design of family has collapsed. Robyn's patience and quiet strength contrast sharply with his clumsy attempts at humor, showing that love cannot survive on nostalgia or jokes alone. It requires humility, emotional presence, and truth. Their moment together, though uncomfortable, reflects the reality of many long-term relationships that have endured loss. Sometimes we laugh not because it's funny, but because we're trying to remember how to feel connected again. In the end, Kody Brown's attempt to romance Robyn with humor may not have achieved its intended effect, but it sparked an important conversation about authenticity, vulnerability, and the emotional residue of choices made long ago. It reminded audiences that behind the laughter lies a man searching for redemption and a woman trying to hold on to compassion. And while the moment may have drawn laughter from viewers, it also drew empathy, a recognition that even in their most awkward human moments, Kody and Robyn remain two people navigating the complex terrain of love, regret, and the fragile hope of starting over.